Welcome everyone. So I am going to be making chocolate dipped coconut macaroons, which are super, super easy to make. They are not the French macaron or, the French politician. Coconut dipped macaroons are great for Passover, which starts, I believe, tomorrow night. So I thought it would be the perfect thing to do for today. And again, quick and easy. So if you are baking along with me, I recommend you preheat your oven to 350 degrees. And get a baking sheet ready with some parchment paper, or I have a slip mat here, which just makes cleanup easy and makes it really easy to pull those coconut macaroons off of the pan. So for this recipe, we are gonna need 2.5 cups of sweetened or unsweetened shredded coconut, 3 egg whites, 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and then a 1/3 cup of sugar if you used sweetened coconut. If you manage to find unsweetened coconut, you can up that to 2/3. All right, so I'm going to show you quick how to separate out your egg whites from your yolks. I have my eggs here, and I hope you can all see me, right? I tried to position my camera so it's pretty easy to see. Now, when you're separating out your egg whites from your yolks, you always want to make sure to have a separate bowl to dump your yolks into, because we can actually use those yolks for something else. And I'll show you a little fun thing I like using my egg yolks for at the end. So I'm just gonna give a little tap, and with my fingers, I'm gonna carefully pry it apart. I don't wanna rush this process. And over a big bowl, I'm gonna let my egg whites spill over, okay? And I can go back and forth between the 2 egg shells until most of my egg whites are in the big bowl, all right? So now I'm just left with an egg yolk, and I'm gonna put that egg yolk in my separate little bowl so I can use it for a different project later on. I'm gonna crack on the table, flat surface, and then very carefully over my big bowl, let the egg whites just sort of drip down. And I'm going to go back and forth until most of the egg whites fall into the bowl. And egg yolk goes in the little bowl, and I'll do that one more time. Crack. And over. Now, if you get some egg yolk into the big bowl, if the egg yolk splits, you can use your egg shell to scoop out that egg yolk that made into the bigger bowl. If I was making something like a meringue, I would have to make sure every single little bit of that egg yolk is out of my mix. But for this recipe, I really don't have to worry about it. Okay, so you can just get most of it out of there, again, with your eggshell and keep on going. It's not the end of the world. All right, so I have my egg whites. I am now going to take some of my vanilla extract and 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract into my bowl. 1.5. There we go. Set that aside. So I'm just going to whisk it up. And now I'm going to take my coconut, and I want, again, 2.5 cups, give or take. It does not have to be exact. Right, so I'm going to loosely pour over my big bowl. 1 cup, 2 cup into the bowl. You'll see these are very loose measurements, okay? And that is okay. And then eyeball 1/2 cup. So because I am using sweetened coconut, I am only going to use about 1/3 cup of sugar. If I manage to find unsweetened coconut, I can up that to 2/3. I'm going to take a scoop of that and put that in my bowl. So I have all of my mix in the bowl. Okay, that's the vanilla, the sugar, the coconut, the egg whites. With clean hands or a spoon, I like getting my hands just in there. You're just going to mix everything up. Okay, and this is the great part where little hands can get in there, and it's kind of slimy, kind of fun. And you want to make sure everything is incorporated. So no coconut sort of on the side of the bowl without egg whites. It should be nice and squishy, and it makes a fun squishy noise. I don't know if you can hear that. Right, great noise. You didn't know this was going to be, what is it, ASMR video? It's cooking and ASMR. Okay, parents, if you don't know what that is, just ask your kids, they know. All right, I have my mix, I have my parchment paper or slip mat covered cookie tray or baking pan. Now this is where I get to decide how big I want my macaroons to be. All right, you're gonna take a handful or however small or big you want it to be, and you're just gonna squish it in your hand and make a nice mound, right? And place it on your cookie sheet. Now these are nice because they don't spread like other cookies. All right, if you've read a lot of recipes for cookies, you have to keep everything apart a bit so that way they don't bleed into each other. These won't do that. If you didn't have enough coconut, okay, so Chase, I think you were saying you only had 2 cups of coconut. You really want to make sure you give your coconut a nice squeeze to get out the extra egg white, okay? So I'm just going to mound these up and put them on my tray. And the amount of macaroons you get out of this is entirely dependent on how big you decide to make them. I've made like huge monster ones before, but I like doing just sort of a fist full of them. I think it's a nice size and it looks really pretty on the table too. Okay, I'm gonna make sure these all get in there and use up all my coconut. Okay. Once that's done, I'm going to put these in the oven for about 30 minutes. So I'm just going to do that and wash my hands, and I will be right back. If anyone has any questions, I'll still be able to hear you while I put these in. All right. Because this is supposed to be a shorter cooking segment, I went ahead and the magic of, baking shows. I went ahead and made a batch already so you could see what these will look like when you pull them out of the oven in about 30 minutes. Okay. So they are nice and golden brown on the top. Okay. They're beautifully browned on the bottom. If you check on them in like 15 minutes, you can maybe give them a little rotation. That sort of depends on your oven, but it never hurts to do that, to just rotate the pan. When they are completely cooled, you can get your chocolate into the mix. There are 2 ways to melt your chocolate. Using a microwave safe bowl, you can melt the chocolate in 30-second increments in the microwave, or using a heat safe bowl over a pot of near boiling water. If you've never melted chocolate in the microwave before, know that short bursts, about 30 seconds at a time, is what you want to do. So 30 seconds, mix it up, put it back in for another 30 seconds. You don't want to overheat it. You don't want to burn the chocolate. And make sure your hands and your bowl are dry as well. That's something I should have said before. My apologies. Water is the enemy of chocolate. So if you get water in that chocolate mix, the chocolate will seize. You can save it by turning it into a ganache, adding some heavy cream in there, and then it'll be a nice thing you can drizzle on top of the macaroons still. It just won't harden. So it's still got chunks in it, but I can feel that the bowl is getting kind of warm. So I know if I just keep stirring this, those chunks of chocolate are going to melt completely.
Yeah, my chocolate is like getting thicker.
It's not. If I click on you, let's see. Oh, there we go. Can you hold up your chocolate to this camera so I can see? Can you stir it for me?
Oh, that is.
Yeah, sure.
That is so it looks like it did melt. It looks like it did melt, and then it hardened back up. So did you melt it a while ago, like when I was first talking about melting chocolate, or did you just start that process?
I started it a while ago.
So that's probably what happened. It looks like to me it was melted at one point, right? Those orange chocolate chips you have in there, that's definitely normally melted chocolate. So I think your chocolate just hardened. So if that happened, if you were waiting to dip for all of us together, you can just stick it right on back in the microwave. So here's my spoon, and I'm gonna. All right, so I just want to show you, it's a little bit easy to see in here. It just sort of pours out. If you've ever watched like Willy Wonka, right, there's that scene where just the chocolate is pouring out. There you go.
That would be a fun movie night with this.
The original, though, with Gene Wilder. All right, so that's how it pours out. So I'm going to just show you a couple of different techniques for putting some chocolate on these guys for when you're ready to do so out of the oven. The traditional way, all right, you take your macaroon, you dip it right on in, give it a nice swirl. And then you can kind of let it drip. And if I spiralize it as it's dripping, it'll just make a cleaner sort of cut with the chocolate. So there you go. Doesn't that look delicious? With a little bit of coconut showing at the bottom.
Oh, wish I could come over.
I wish people could come over too. All right. So if I'm actually going to show you, I'm going to break this one apart. So this macaroon, it's fallen apart. Okay. When I pulled it off the parchment, it popped off into two pieces. So when that happens, I'm going to show you how I fix it. So this way nobody knows. All right. I'm going to take my parchment, and you can use a clean piece of parchment for this. I'm going to take my chocolate, put a little dollop of it down on my parchment paper. I'll try to show you there. Okay, if you could see that dollop right there. Take the bottom of my macaroon, squish it down. Okay. Take a little bit more chocolate, put it onto that piece of coconut macaroon that is sort of split apart. And I'm going to use that chocolate to glue together the two pieces. And then just to finish it off, I'm going to take my chocolate and drizzle it with my spoon. Okay, so the whole thing is going to look very intentional, and no one's going to know that it's split in half. Do the macaroons expand like muffins or cookies? They do not. There is no leavener in these. So leavener meaning like a baking soda or a baking powder or even like a yeast or something. So these are not going to expand, which is why you can kind of crowd them a little bit on your pan. You can put them closer together. They're not going to, whatever size you put them in is the size they're going to come out. All right, so there's another example of how I've drizzled that. So you can't even tell really that I've glued it together with the chocolate. No one's gonna know. All right, once they're all dipped, I can leave them out if I have a while before they're gonna be eaten, or I can pop the whole tray in the refrigerator, and that chocolate is gonna harden really nicely, so I can put them on a nice plate and serve them to my family for Passover, for whatever, you know, dinner, lunch, whenever you feel like eating a snack.
There you go.
So,
For macaroons, don't you usually have to let it set, like sit for a while before baking it?
so you're thinking of French macarons,
Oh.
which are, for those who have never had one, a French macaron is egg whites that you whip up into a meringue-like texture, so sort of marshmallowy. You get a lot of air into there. You then have to carefully fold an almond flour mixture, very carefully fold in there. And then you pipe it out into smallish circles. And yeah, then you leave them to form a shell before you put them in the oven on a low heat. And they're very delicious, very delicate, but that is not what these are. These are definitely not as delicate or as complicated as those are. Thanks for baking these coconut macaroons with me today. If you end up baking your own, make sure to tag me on Instagram at KCHBakes, or you can also find me on Facebook at facebook.com/KCHBakes.